That's better. I can see everybody now. Awesome. Right. Okay. So let's have a talk about kit. I think um, there's a real hot topic at the moment, and that is about um, repack cycles. Really, really hot topic. Um, British Skydiving are considering going to a 12-month repack cycle. And there's a lot of people that are going to be really happy about that. But what I want to share with you really is how much goes in to a repack. So how many people know how much detail we go to when we do an inspection and repack? And I call it an inspection and repack because actually we're not just repacking your reserve. What we do is we start at the beginning and we go all the way through the kit from top to bottom, inside, outside, and we check everything. So if ever you come to me and say, Karen, I need a repack, I'll say, no, actually, you don't need a repack. You need an inspection and repack. So, and that's what we do. So starting from the top, the first thing we do when we get your kit is to actually visually look at it. So we take our glasses off. No, we don't, not really. We take your kit, we take it into our clean area, our sterile area. And this is one thing for you to consider as well. So where is your reserve repacked? Where exactly? Do you know where your reserve is being packed? Because I know a lot of places that I wouldn't put my cat in that pack reserves. So the first thing you need to know is, where is it being repacked? Who is it being repacked by? Do they really care, or are they just doing it for the money? And what sort of service are you getting? So at Langar, we have what's called a minimum level of service, and that's something that's been agreed and signed by everybody that packs a reserve or does an inspection and repack at Skydive Langar. So we start off with a visual inspection of the kit. Now, that doesn't just mean that we look at it. I mean, it means that we really look at it. So we look at the front of the kit. We check all the webbing from the top all the way down. Then we'll turn it over and we'll look at the back, the container. Then we'll open up the main and take out the main parachute. When we do that, we look at your deployment system. So we look at the reserve, the main pilot chute, the kill line, the bridle, the D-bag, and then we look at the main parachute. Now, as an advanced packer or a rigger or an advanced rigger or whatever you'd like to be, we are not actually responsible for your main parachute. So a lot of places won't even do that. And in some places that do your reserve inspection and repack, they won't even reconnect your main. So they'll give you your main back and say, there you go, there's your main. We're not responsible for that, but with the bit that this is the bit that we're responsible for. So that's just the harness, the container, the reserve pilot chute, the reserve deployment system, and the handles. So a lot of drop zones, if you take your kit to them, will actually take out your cutaway cable and just hand you back your main. That's not something that we do at Skydive Langar. So starting from the main pilot chute, we'll check the main pilot chute and the kill line. Now, a lot of people say to me, well, Karen, you know, I'm having some really funny openings. And I had an argument with somebody the other day, which was quite interesting. And I said to him, yeah, it's probably your pilot chute. No, nothing wrong with my pilot chute. No, there's definitely probably your pilot chute. No, definitely not my pilot chute. Okay, fine. And then at the weekend came back and said, actually, I think you're right. I think it is my pilot chute. So pilot chutes don't last forever. And you should be looking at changing it or thinking about changing it around about 400 or 500 jumps. The same with kill lines. Kill lines do not last forever. And people think, oh, well, you know, my pilot chute's okay. I'm going to just keep cocking it and keep cocking it and keep cocking it. And depending on the fabric that your kill line is made out of, it may very well shrink. And so each time you're pulling it, you're causing it to shrink a little bit more. And then eventually your pilot chute won't cock completely. And then you're going to start having problems with your openings. So we check the kill line. Kill line, roughly, and this is a manufacturer's recommended guideline now, 100 jumps for a kill line. Now that seems to be quite low, but this is the current thinking that's coming out, 100 jumps now for a kill line. And I mean, in some cases, that means some people are going to have a new kill line, I don't know, maybe twice a year. But for our AFF instructors, it could mean that they have a new kill line every month or every couple of months. And I'm not saying, you know, you've got to count up the amount and it's definitely got to be 100 jumps. But if you've got that mindset, well, my kill line really needs to be replaced about 100 jumps, then you're probably going to get to 200 jumps and go, actually, I really think I need to replace this now. But it does have a dramatic impact on your openings. So taking the main aside, we're going to check the BOC, the bit that holds your pilot chute. Really, really vital piece of equipment there. And the reason that it's a vital piece of equipment is because I've actually seen somebody climb out of an aeroplane, have their pilot chute dragged by the wind over the tail of the plane, and then was suspended from the tail of the plane. Everybody had to bail out. So we had 15 people on board. Everyone had to get out in an emergency situation. The jumper involved was suspended from the tail. He then cut away and deployed his reserve. All the jumpers were fine, but it then left the pilot with a damaged tail of his plane. And so, and as you can imagine, tens of thousands of euros to replace it, to repair it. And, you know, potentially a very, very, very dangerous situation for everybody involved, including the pilot. So, you know, when we say to you, look, your BOC is getting a bit loose, then you really need to think about that, because if you are climbing on the outside of the aeroplane, then, you know, there is a huge risk there. So we check the BOC. We then check the main tray of the container, and that includes the grommets. Now, I don't know how many of you have seen my previous presentation, the one I was going to put up that doesn't want to work. But there's actually 392 components to a parachute system, and that doesn't include the canopies. 392. And that includes bits of thread, bits of line, some binding, some fancy metal work, and all those other bits and pieces that go up to make our containers. So 392 pieces to actually keep an eye on is quite a lot. So we'll start off by checking the main tray, checking to make sure that all the grommets are nice and smooth. If you have a piece of broken stitching on your binding tape, we are supposed to replace that. You are not supposed to have any broken stitching on your container at all, anywhere. And that includes on your D-bag. So you could have a bit of loose thread and you think, oh, that's all right. Yeah, it is okay most of the time, but you're not actually supposed to have any broken stitching at all on any piece of your equipment. And if you have got some, even if it's only a small piece, maybe an inch or two, then you need to take it to your rigger and get it put back. So we check the main tray, check to make sure that the grommets, as I say, and the stiffeners. Now, in a lot of containers, the stiffeners will break. And so, you know, it could be, if you can hear something clicking when you're touching your stiffener, then the chances are that that's broken. Icons have a tendency for the bottom flap, for the center of the grommet to break. So you have the grommet in the center and you have a piece of plastic round that grommet and they break right dead smack in the center. So if you're looking, or you're pulling your container and you're looking and you're going, well, actually, this looks a bit odd, the chances are that that plastic in the bottom is broken. And again, it needs to be replaced. You can't just leave it. Moving up from there, we'll then, after we've done all of that, we'll then look at the reserve. So we'll pull out the pilot chute, the reserve pilot chute, and we'll inspect the reserve pilot chute. Now we inspect all of the aspects of the reserve pilot chute, including the grommets. So you have a grommet on the top. Some pilot chutes have a grommet on the top and on the bottom. So we'll inspect that. If they have netting, we inspect that, and the F111 that goes with it. So we inspect all of that. From there, we'll inspect the bridle all the way down to the bag, and then we'll look at the D-bag. Now, at the moment, we've got some really, really, really awful weather, and it's making our landing area very wet. And as a result of that, the other day we had quite a muddy container come in, and I decided to open it up because I thought, well, it's not due a repack, it's already inspections, but I'm going to open it up anyway. And inside we got a handful of mud from the inside of the reserve tray. Now you might think, oh well, you know, the reserve's in a bag, so what's the problem? But that your cutter for your AAD is actually in the same location. So you need to think about, you know, I've had a really bad landing, I've been dragged backwards. Has the mud, or even, you know, if you go abroad and you're on a sandy beach somewhere, has the sand got inside my container? Has the sand got inside my cutter? You know, I know a lot of people, especially experienced jumpers, that if they go away, say to Dubai or somewhere like that, they'll come back and they'll say to me, Karen, look, I really want you to open up my reserve tray because I've been jumping and landing in the sand. And I'm worried that the sand's got inside my reserve. And it's something for you to consider. You know, if you are jumping somewhere that's sandy, dusty, if you go out to Arizona, places like that. So it does get in and it will get inside your cutter. So think about that. The other thing that you need to consider if you are going away and you are jumping abroad is salt and salt water. Having worked in Kenya for 5 years consecutively, I've seen a lot of damage to metalwork that's been in the sea or been near the sea. I get a lot of kit sent over from Africa for regular maintenance, and always, always, always you will find some rust or some degradation on the metalwork. So something to think about there. So getting back to the repack, we take out the reserve pilot chute, check the bridle, we then check the bag. And this is before we even touch the canopy. So all of that is coming out first. Then we, once we've checked the bag over and made sure that your safety stow, which is the bit that holds your lines, I don't know if you've ever seen one, in your free bag, make sure that that isn't damaged, because quite often they get damaged. And they just get damaged over time. It's not a thing that, you know, you can do anything about. They just do get damaged over time. So we take that all out, and then we'll take the reserve parachute out. Now, at Langar, we're very fortunate because we've got really good facilities, and we do hang up every single parachute that we have. If your advanced packer hasn't got the ability to check inside of your parachute, then they're not doing a correct job. We do need, and it is a requirement, that you check the top skin, the bottom skin, and all of the cell walls. So it's not sufficient just to lay it on the floor and have a look at the outside. We do need to get inside and we do need to have a look. And then we'll check all the line attachment points to make sure that they're not broken. And I have come across reserve parachutes where line attachment points have been broken. So again, something for you to consider. Check all the line attachment points. We even check every single bar tack on your lines. So the funny thing is that whenever I run an AP course, and I go through all of this with the people on the course, they always say to me, God, is that all you charge? Because this takes forever. And, you know, you can pretty much guarantee that the first time a newly qualified advanced packer does a reserve inspection and repack, it will take them all day. So, you know, if you think £65, oh, that's quite expensive. Actually, it's not for the time it takes. So So we need to think about that. So we check everything over. The webbing is the most important thing, obviously, because that's what holds you into your parachute. The metalwork also has to be of military specification. So we have two types of markings for our metalwork. One is a mil spec, and it will say mil, and then a number, and the other one is PS, which is the PIA system, and that's the latest system. But even if you haven't got either of those, if your rig was built, say, in Germany, it'll have some sort of marking on it to say that it's military specification, and that needs to be, you know, to a certain design and a certain specification and meet the requirements to be used in parachuting. So all of that has to be checked before we even think about repacking your parachute. Once we've done all the checks, we will repack your parachute, put it back in the bag, and we will follow the manufacturer's instructions for closing your container. And they are all different. They're not all the same. So, you know, there's a huge library for us to look at for packing manuals, and we use those all the time. What you don't get at a lot of places, as I say, that it is the inspection of the main, and that's something that we do at Langar as part of our minimum levels of service. So once we've done our repack and we've closed everything up, we've changed your closing loop on your reserve, we've checked your AAD and pulled that all out because they break as well. We'll then hook up your main and we'll check your main, and we'll do the same thing with your main that we do with your reserve. We'll actually get inside the cells and have a look. And then we will repack your main, replace the bungees on your bag, because again, bungees wear out, they stretch, and if they're not holding your line securely, then you're going to have problems with your openings. We will check your lines and give you any advice that we think you need. So, for example, if you come and we think your brake lines need changing, we'll say to you, actually, we think your brake lines need changing. And then we'll do that. So we'll change all the bungees on your bag, we'll check your main parachute over, and then we'll change your closing loop. And again, the same thing applies. How often are you changing your closing loop? Something that you should know how to do. You should know how to disconnect and reconnect your main parachute. You should know how to change your bungees, and you should know how to change your closing loop. And if you don't, then ask somebody. Ask our packers. They're very experienced in that sort of thing. Ask your instructor, or come and see me and ask me. So that's sort of pretty much what we do in terms of repacking a reserve. However, there is a lot of stuff going around at the moment about changing to a 12-month repack cycle. So what I'd like to know is what your thoughts and feelings are, or what questions that you have about changing to a 12-month repack cycle. Alex, where are you? What are some of the most common maintenance mistakes by skydivers? So Alex is asking, what are some of the most common maintenance mistakes by my skydivers, apart from not coming to a rigger enough? Well, that's true. Okay, so the most common mistakes from a skydiver is misrouting your RSL. If you have disconnected your main parachute for whatever reason, whether you think, oh, well, I need to do my monthly maintenance, take out my cutaway handle, clean my cutaway handle and put it back again. The biggest mistake is the misrouting of your RSL. And I've seen a lot of that. Martin saying I found it on Flightline Check a few times. There you go. Okay, save me £65 a year. Who's that? Jeff, Karen and Alfie. Actually, believe it or not, the how can I put this? The consideration being made by riggers at the moment is to actually double the cost of the reserve repack. So I don't think you're going to get saving £65. British Skydiving are thinking about making the mandatory main inspection, but that's not mandatory right now. And it's something that you get at Langar anyway for your £65. So yeah, we don't charge you extra for your reserve repack, because we do need to, because we do the main. But yeah, there is a move towards doubling the cost of the repack. Keeley, Phil, we need to be 5 times more observant on the maintenance of our own kit if it's done once a year. Yes, absolutely, Keeley. The biggest problem that I have with going to a repack cycle, a 12-month repack cycle, is not for average Joe jumper. It's for people that are maybe competing regularly, so doing lots and lots and lots of jumps in a year, especially like you, David's nodding. When you're doing a high volume of jumps in a year, then your kit is going to get more wear. And how do we stop that from happening? If we're doing a 6-month repack cycle, then we can catch it. And I can honestly say that I haven't had a kit in that is used heavily by an AFFI, a camera person, or an experienced competitor that doesn't need something doing to it at a 6-month cycle. You know, there's always something that needs doing. Tandems are exactly the same. Right, okay, so what have we got here? Do you teach your standards, i.e. main container, and any non-required checks the advanced packer course? Okay, all right, Jeff, I've got you. Yes, I do teach our standards, and this is why we have a minimum service level agreement with all of the packers that are authorised at Skydive Langar, that they have to do what they've been taught to do. And so they have to meet the standards that I set for the drop zone. And that does include repacking, checking and repacking the main. We do it for all of our student kit. We do it for the tandem. So why are we not doing it for our customers? And that's exactly what we do. So we extend that minimum level of service to our customers as well. You're keen to hear if I think it should change to 12 months. I do and I don't. So I'm for average Joe jumper that does 200-300 jumps a year, I really don't have a problem. And I can quite happily put my hand on my heart and say, you know, mine will last a year. I know they will. But the problem with going to 12 months is that, as you may or may not know, reserve pack jobs settle after a while. So by the time they get to 6 months, they can be loose, you know, and then of course you've got the issue of maybe a reserve pilot chute coming out when you're hanging on the outside of the plane, or a reserve pilot chute coming out inside the plane. So what British Skydiving are thinking about now is putting in a mandatory check at 6 months. So we've got this situation now where, yes, okay, if we do go to 12 months, then that's all well and good, and most riggers will put their prices up by double. But then you're going to have to bring it back every 6 months anyway to have the outside checked. So what they're thinking about doing is doing something like we do with a tandem system. So I don't know if you're aware, some people will know, but every tandem has to be checked every 100 jumps. And that's a visual inspection from the outside of the reserve tray. So we don't open the reserve, but what we do have to do is take out the main parachute, all of the cables, and check everything. So we hang up the parachute, check the drogue, check the bridle, all of those other things. And we do that for tandem equipment. And they're talking about putting a similar thing in for sports kit if we go to a 12-month repack cycle. So, you know, you've got to think about it yourself. And would you rather we checked everything, including your reserve, or would you rather we leave it and just check the outside and just check the other bits? Right. So Daryl saying, even if it goes to 12 months, I'll stick to 6 months. A lot of people are saying that to me. Can you choose to get a repack early? Yes, we can. You can. You can choose to have your kit repacked whenever you want. That really is up to you. My kit doesn't make 6 months. It's yeah, usually because you're cutting away, Matt. It's safer purely from a reserve point of view to have it packed every 6. Why 6? Why not 3? We used to have a 3-month repack cycle, and then it went to 4 months, and then it went to 6 months. I think from my point of view, the USA have 180 days. They don't have 6 months, they have a 180-day repack cycle. The FAA riggers, which is the USPA system, are regulated by the FAA, not by the USPA. And so there is a regulation there that is difficult for them to change. However, they do on average, excluding USPA affiliated centres, something like 18,000 jumps per centre per year. And on top of America, you've then got another 100 that USPA affiliated centres, which follow the same system. So if most of the world is doing 180 days, then I'm thinking, well, you know, the argument that I keep getting back is, well, most of Europe is doing 12 months. Yeah, most of it is. But if you look at the statistics, Germany are doing, on average, 2,900 jumps per centre per year. Australia, who are another place that's been brought up on the consultation that we're doing at the moment, they have a system of 12 months for experienced jumpers and then 6 months for tandems and students. They do 6,500 jumps per centre per year. The UK do 9,500 jumps per centre per year on average. So I think we're comparing apples and oranges, but that's my personal opinion. Right, let me have a look. Where are we? Where are we? So all right, okay. So will a reserve repack that is required due to a malfunction also cost double the price? Well, I think it probably will, because if riggers put their prices up to double, which is what the suggestion is, I think yes, if you have a malfunction, then you'll be paying double the price. Yeah. I think it should be linked to the number of jumps completed for a period of 6 months. I agree. I do agree with you, David. I really do. The biggest problem with that is, how do we monitor that? How do we keep a check on that? You know, do we say, right, okay, well, every time you turn up at the drop zone, we've got to check your AAD? You know, it's just not going to happen. And there's always going to be that issue, isn't there? Well, oh, sorry, I didn't realise I've gone over. I've now done 600 jumps. So, I mean, one of the things that I have put forward is that maybe we take jump numbers, for example. But again, it's how we deal with that. You know, with a date, we've got a specific date. If we're going on jump numbers alone, then, you know, how are we going to deal with that? You know, are you going to, and how are we going to deal with it if you've got 2 kits? You know, turn up with this kit, turn up with that kit. So, and some of our instructors have 3 or maybe 4 kits. It's a pack and reserve deteriorates the material. He's right. It is correct, Paul. We do damage the fabric of the reserve every time we touch it, and that's our hands, you know, our body oils, all of that sort of stuff. Yes, it does damage the material, but if you look at PD, they put boxes on their parachutes, and they say that you can have 40 repacks or 20 reserve rides. Does that then mean that our reserve parachute is going to last 40 years? And would you be happy jumping a 40-year-old parachute reserve? I know certainly I wouldn't. So yes, it does. But the manufacturers have said that originally when you speak to PD, they say, no, 6 months, 6 months. But if they make it mandatory for us to pack the reserve every 6 months, then they're going to lose the market in Europe, in those countries that have a 12-month repack cycle, because then their riggers are going to say, well, no, because I've got to pack that one every 6 months. So if you buy a speed, I've only got to pack that one every 12 months. So this is they say that we can go up to 12 months, but it's like a speed limit, up to 12 months. It doesn't mean that they say we have got to do it in 12 months. PD have a great system for relifing reserve parachutes. You can send it back, they test it, they maybe change the lines, and they will send it back with another label on. Now, on Friday, I packed a tandem reserve that was from 1988. 1988. But it's been back to PD and they have recertified it for another 35 repacks. So by the time we finish that, I mean, I'm not saying that it's going to stay in service that long. It's actually due to come out at the end of this year. But, that parachute could be 45 years old. And that's not something that I want to encourage, to be quite honest. Okay. Yeah, I'll stop cutting away if the price goes up. Well done, Matt. Have you any advice for new jumper to be able to tell if their canopy is opening and flying as it should? Presumably they can bring their main for inspection anytime. Yeah, that's absolutely true. How can you clean a muddy pilot chute if you landed in a muddy swamp? It's a Langar. Okay, so if you think you've got a problem with the way your parachute's flying, if you let me know when you're flying it or when you're going to jump and what color it is, etc., I'll come outside and have a look and I'll see it flying. And I'll be able to tell you if there's something wrong with it. Generally, if you can let go of your toggles, not do anything, or not let go of them, but just keep them there, and it flies straight, and your harness is straight, then generally it's flying okay. The biggest problem with main parachutes is deterioration of the crossport vents. So if we look inside a parachute, we've got our little crossport vents that let the air through. As the canopy gets older, they start to split. And that's when you get sort of an instability in the rigidness of the wing. And so one of the reasons that we check your main parachute is that we go inside it. And this is what I was saying about, if people haven't got the facility to actually look inside your parachute, they're not doing a proper job. Because if those crossport vents split, then your wing is no longer rigid. And yes, you can bring it in any time and we will give it an inspection. How can you clean a muddy pilot chute? So clean water, warm water will clean off your muddy pilot chute. If you have any further problems and it's stained, well, there's not really a lot you can do about the staining. You can use isopropyl alcohol for cleaning bits and pieces, so long as it is diluted. Not a question, but you're a star and we appreciate your high standards. Oh, thank you, Alex. 2 minutes, okay. It'll gonna cut out in 2 minutes. Anybody else got any questions? No. Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen. That was absolutely amazing. We really, really appreciate it. And I've recorded all of this, so if anybody missed any part of it, you can watch it on catch up. Karen, you rock. Thank you. You're a star. So many nice messages. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.